Hey guys, it's M, and today I wanted to talk about my favorite power-up in anime, MT, or Muso Tensei. No matter what time period, throughout all of anime, we always get our big power-up form. Something to put our heroes on the same tier, if not above our villains. A lot of them have sick designs and have huge impacts on the show or fights they're used in. My problem is, a lot of them are just that, power-ups. The last example I can think of one being related to who the character was, story-wise, was Joy Boy. Otherwise, it feels like the Dragon Ball effect's taken over. Forms on top of forms for the sake of strength that look cool, but have little lasting power. I don't mean this just to gas up one of my favorite animes, but Muso Tensei is literally the perfect end of show power, and I'm shocked there isn't more like it. First, we have to look at what it does. Unlike most anime forms, Muso Tensei isn't really a direct power-up in the sense of Ken hits harder and now he can win. HNK's always been a more technical show, so in the vein of that, MT is a more technical technique or form. First, it makes you intangible to anyone who's not in MT. In most animes, this would be the main effect to turn the tides, but that's more or less a side effect. What it mainly does is allow Ken to channel the souls of his friends and foes, letting him use their techniques the exact same way they would. This by itself is cool from the usual anime power scaler type perspective, as Ken can just casually do any of the stronger techniques from the show and in theory nuke whoever he's fighting with some random bullshit they'd never expect. But symbolically, it carries more weight than most forms I've seen in animes, especially nowadays. I'm going to go a bit into the manga. For most of you, I doubt I need to explain any of this, but I just want to say this so everyone's on the same page. The timing they decide to introduce this technique is why I feel it's so powerful narrative-wise. Ken doesn't have a ton of forms or techniques like this. This is really his only one, and it's saved for the second to final encounter with Raoh. Stacking on top of this, having him use it against Raoh in particular was genius. Sure, you could clap back and say he's our main villain, so he'd have to use it on him, but it is a bit deeper than that. Raoh played a part in literally every character's lives who show up behind Ken when he was using MT. This isn't just Ken fighting Raoh at this point. This is Ken carrying the souls of his fallen comrades literally on his back against the man who was the dictator of the wasteland and who led to most of their deaths. And the specific moment it's introduced is the first time we see Raoh show fear. It's amazing. It's one of the few times the show made me feel something more than, oh yeah, it's time to whoop his ass, when it comes to a form. This feels like all of Raoh's past actions symbolically coming back to bite him. While for us the viewer, it makes everything up to this point feel relevant in some regard. Even when Raoh eventually achieves MT, he can't use the techniques of any other characters, and there's no one behind him. Showing that while Ken connected to everyone else he's met along his journey we've seen spanning across the entire show, Raoh doesn't have anybody. Ken gained his strength by fighting and protecting others and learning from them, while Raoh gained his strength on his own and by forcibly taking it. Even though they achieved the same form and some argue Raoh shouldn't even have gotten it, it shows the differences between them and how they got to where they were. This was damn near perfect payoff to the entirety of HNK 1, and probably the best payoff we got in HNK as a whole. Some can argue it should have got more screen time and been used more, and while I kinda feel the same, it would have felt nowhere near as satisfying applied anywhere else. It shows Ken's mastery growing over the course of the show, but what made most of this technique special was Raoh knowing those characters Ken was using the techniques of. Even if he did something wild later on, like Speed Blitz Han or Hyo with Souther's moves, it would have been cool, sure, but narratively it wouldn't have had any weight at all. By using it as sparingly as they did, it never really lost its importance. If I had to compare its impact to something, let's think of the original Super Saiyan. The entire arc and pretty much all of Z to the Namek arc hypes us up for when these two meet. Frieza, similar to Raoh, pretty much manhandles the entire cast. Then when it's time to get serious, Super Saiyan comes out. Frieza, who seemed near undefeatable before that point, starts showing fear. It reflects back on him wiping out the Saiyans for his fear of his power. And in a way, it's Goku getting payback for his entire race and his family. But when you look at it now, it's a thing he rarely does, and it's insanely weak compared to his other 800,000 forms. And literally every other Saiyan in the show that was alive past Namek can't do it. MT knew what its best application was, and it mostly stayed relegated to that scene. Hell, even when it technically loses, it doesn't lose its strength. When he attempts it against Kaio, Kaio doesn't fight it head on. He used his powers to circumvent going against it entirely, something no one else in the series could really do. This way they made Kaio a unique threat, but in a way that doesn't shit on what HNK1 established. As if Ken used MT against literally anyone else past this point, or even anyone else in the Asura arc, they would have got ragdolled immediately. But anyways, you guys caught me in rare form. Rarely really have praises for something with no real drawbacks. I'm sure by next week that'll change. Regardless, what do you guys think about MT? Do you love it, or do you wish they did more with it? As always, I'm glad to discuss with you guys in the comments, and I've been M, and I am out.